Parshvi, and you're watching day 6 of learning React with React documentation 30-day challenges. A 30-day challenge. Today we will be working on describing the UI, writing markup with JSX. So, what is JSX? JSX is a syntax extension for JavaScript that lets you write HTML-like markup inside JS file. So this is the definition of JSX if somebody asks. Basically, it's a JS which is used to write HTML in JS file. Yeah, can may sound a little weird or confusing as well. Cool. Although there are other ways to write components, most React developers prefer the conciseness of JSX, and most code base use it. So basically what happened is most of the coders or developers prefer JSX because they don't have to learn some other way to write HTML. They can use just HTML to write in JS file and create their component. What we will going to learn today? Why React mixes markup with rendering logic. Okay. I mean, yeah, why we are going in a step further to create a JSX and write it in your JS file when we can just use a simple HTML, or how JSX is different from HTML. Now, JSX may look like an HTML, but it is not. It is basically a JavaScript code. So how it is different from HTML is important to know, because if you think you know HTML and just if you think you know HTML and you may write JSX, but there are certain code error you will get which you will also not able to debug what happened. How to display information with JSX. Okay, so first thing we will know how. Second thing is first thing we will know why. Second thing is how different it is from HTML, and third is how to actually use it. Awesome. JSX, putting markup into JS. Okay, the web has been built on HTML, CSS and JS. So if you have studying web development, you know HTML, CSS and JS is the building block of any web development or web application. For many years, web developer kept content in HTML, design in CSS and logic in JS. So if you use any other framework of JavaScript, or you will see that you have separate files for HTML, separate file for CSS and separate file for JS. Content was marked inside HTML while page logic lives separately in JS. Okay, so basically you have again the same thing. You have a separate file where you will create your HTML code for markup, and you add logic separately to JS file, and you have to connect both of them. Okay, so this is how a simple HTML look. If you don't know how HTML work, I would recommend you to go and have a basics of it, like how to write tags, what different kind of tags are, and if you want a detailed course about that as well, I'm gonna look. I'm ready to create that. Not a problem. Now this is JS. They have added certain function which do certain piece of logic. Okay, but as the web became more interactive, logic increasingly determined content. Okay, so basically earlier what happened was web development was most HTML centric. Basically, developer focused mostly on creating HTML markups, to So in previous web development processes, HTML was more focused than JS, but as you know, our web application evolved, more interactivity was required from the user. So more logic was required. To do that, there was a shift from HTML to JS. Okay, JS was in charge of HTML. This is why React rendering logic and markup live together in the same place component. That is awesome. So if somebody asks you the question, I'm gonna write H3 here. Why React plays markup and JS in same file? You can write basically, since increase in user activity or interactivity, basically web development moved to more JS centric. So this is one reason, and that is why React render logic and markup at the same file. So this is the reason why React use JSX or your logic and rendering at the same file. Okay, so let's see. We have a function sidebar, we have a if condition, then we add our p tag, which is a markup tag, else is a form. Okay, here we have form. On the click of this form or on submit, you're using something. Okay, let's explore further. Keeping a button rendering logic and markup together ensures that they stay in sync with each other on every edit. Okay, so basically keeping markup and logic in the same file, we create a sync between them, and change in one, immediately update the change on the other. Conversely, details that are unrelated, such as the button markup or sidebar markup, are isolated from each other, making it easier to change either of them on their own. So basically, we are separating all the logic for each component in a separate file. So button has its own logic, whereas sidebar has its own logic within a separate file. So change in one will not affect the change in other. That is very important point. So ensure they stay in sync with each other on every edit. So I'm going to add here, point 1. I'm going to add point 2 here. Ensures that logic and rendering, a markup, I will say, better word for that, stays in sync with each other on every edit. Okay. Our third point will be, isolate the element logic so that no change so that changes does not affect it. So that change in one does not affect the other. Awesome. Each React component is JS function that may contain some markup that React render into browser. Okay, we know that. Okay, React component uses syntax extension called JSX to represent that markup. We know that JSX looks a lot like HTML, but it's bit stricter and displayed dynamic information. Okay, this is important. The main difference between JS and HTML is it is a bit stricter and can display dynamic information. The best way to understand this is to convert some HTML to markup JSS. Okay. Note: JSX and React are two separate things. They are often used together, but you can use them independently of each other. JSX is a syntax extension, whereas React is a JS library. So most people either they don't know or they do not understand that JSX and React are two different things. So you can use JSX in any framework of JavaScript, just importing certain libraries or certain, extensions, whereas React itself is a different library. So it is not necessary like you use JSX to create React, although it is JSX is preferred because it is more easy to use and you don't have to learn another way of syntax. Converting HTML to JSX: suppose you have a perfectly valid HTML, like here we have h1 Hedy Lamar to do's, we have an image tag, we have ul, li. Okay, and now you want to put it into your component. Okay, so basically you write your function component and in return you just add your markup. If you copy paste as is, it will not work. So they have pasted this HTML to this return and it's not working. Okay, so let's see why. This is because JSX is stricter and has few more rules than HTML. So the second point for us is H3 is difference between my apologies, I'm a terrible speller. JSX and HTML. So basically JSX is stricter than HTML. Okay. Most of the times React on-screen error messages will help you to find where the problem is. Give them a read if you get stuck. Okay, so this is important. Whenever you feel your application is not working the way you want, open your developer tools, go to your console.log, see the error. Don't just read the first line, read the whole error message, because sometimes what happens, the first line does not give you any information. You just go down and see. So let's see what are the rules of JSX. First, it returns a single root element. This is not a case for HTML. To return multiple elements from a component, wrap it with a single parent tag. For example, you can use div. So in the earlier example, we were returning multiple tags. They have put that inside a div tag. So rules of JSX. First thing first, returns a single root element. Okay. If you don't want to extra div to your markup, you can add a simple tag, placeholder tag we called it, or fragment. This empty tag is called fragment. Fragment lets you to group together things without any trace in them. Browser HTML tree. use div or fragment to bind the elements. Okay, awesome. Now I'm gonna add fragment as this. So that you know what a fragment means. Let's go for the deep dive. Why do multiple JSX tag needs to be wrapped? Okay, let's see. JSX tools like HTML, but under the hood it transformed into plain JS object. But you can't return two objects from a function without wrapping them in an array. Okay. Example, this explains why you also can't return two JSX tag without wrapping them to another tag or a fragment. So this is very important, discussing like why JSX return any single tag, or you have to wrap your code or a markup inside a tag, is because you know JSX is just a JS object, and whenever you return something in a function in JS, it has to be a single value. So that is why we wrap it inside a tag. Close all the tag. So JSX requires the tag to be explicitly closed. Self-closing tag like image must become image forward slash, and wrapping tags like li oranges must be written li ling, or you know. So the second point is close all the tags. So I'm gonna add this as well here. Close all the tags. So those who are self-closing tag, you have to, you know, deliberately and consciously closed it, like image and li. So here they have added all camel case, almost for all things. JSX turns into JS, and attribute written in JS become the key in JS object. In your own component, you will often want to read this attribute into a variable, but JS has limitation on variable name. For example, this cannot be dashes or reserved as a class. Words like class. Okay, so you need to use camel cases for all the thing. Okay, because ultimately at the end it is JS does not support dash and reserved words. That is why in React many HTML SVG attributes are written in camel cases. Okay, for example, instead of stroke width you write stroke width. So instead of dash you write capital W, that is a camel casing. Since class is a reserved word, in React you write class name. Okay, this is very interesting. So basically what happened is whenever you want to write CSS class selector in your HTML, you use class, whereas in JSX you use class name. Why? Because ultimately JSX is a JavaScript object, and class is a reserved word. So instead of class we use class name. Camel cases for almost, most of things. They said almost just everything. Okay, be safe, better to be safe than to be sorry. Okay, I'm gonna add this as well so that somebody can ask you why we use class name. Reserved word in JS In React, you write class name for JSX. Awesome. So you change the class name. You can find all these attributes in React DOM element. If you get one wrong, don't worry, React will print a message that is possible with a possible correction to a browser console. So if suppose you write class instead of class name, you will get, an error message saying, oh, you cannot add class to your React component or React tag, something like that. Pitfall: for historical reason, areas hyphen star and data hyphen star attributes are written in HTML with dashes. Okay. So for this, we need to check what is the substituent for JSX. Pro tip, okay. Always welcome a tip. Use a JSX converter. Maybe not. Learning JSX is not that difficult, and plus, you won't be using HTML as much as you will be using JSX. So spend some time, practice a little bit, and you're gonna be fine. Just trust me, it's not that difficult. Converting all these attributes in existing markup can be tedious. Tedious, yes. But if you start with JSX, you don't have to, convert it. So yeah, we recommend using a converter to translate your existing HTML or an SVG to JSX. Okay, so this can be useful for SVG because suppose you are trying to copy paste a code which is in SVG, you just have to go to converter and convert it into JSX. Converter are very useful in practice, but it's still worth understanding what is going on that you can comfortably write your own JSX. It's still worth it. It's not, they are giving a choice, but trust me, in real life world, you don't have a choice. You have to learn JSX to work in React. I mean, how many times you're going to write HTML, then going to convert it, then going to again add it to your React component and email to JSX. They had added a fragment because JSX returned only one tag. Then we have h1 with closing, image with self-closing, li with closing tags, and this is how our application will look. Awesome. Recap: now you will know why JSX exists and how to use it in the component. So React component group rendering logic together with markup because they're related. JSX is similar to HTML with few differences. You can use a converter if you need to. Error message will point you in the right direction. Cool. Before we go on the challenge, what we learn JS or React use JSS as a markup to add logic and rendering in the same file. Why? Because we are more focused on logic these days due to increase in user activity. Then second thing, JSX is just a JavaScript object, so it is important to return only a single object. That's why JSX is written. It returns in only one tag. Second thing is you cannot use restrict or reserved word, so class cannot be used. Then what else did we learn? We also learn it is a bit stricter than HTML, so basically you have to have a closing tag, use camel casing for attributes name. Then yeah, I think pretty much we have covered it. So let's try out some challenges. Challenge 1: convert some HTML to JSX. Okay, this HTML was pasted into a component but it's not a valid JSX. Fix it. Of course. So first thing first, we're gonna wrap this inside a fragment. Awesome. Second thing, we have class. It should be class name because class is a reserved word. Okay. Once we do that, we have 2BR, but we need a self-closing tag. So this has to be here. This has to be here. Okay. Now, this is something which doesn't make sense, so I'm gonna, put this here actually. Okay, let's see if this works or not. Oh, it's working. Welcome to my website. You can find my thoughts here and picture of the scientist. It looks good, right? Color palette looks very good. Awesome. We're done with the challenge. Great. So this is what, writing markup with JSX means. Now let's go and see the next part, which is JS in JSX with curly braces. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you learned something, and if you want to understand more about React and basic web development front end, to write in the comment what topics you want the videos on, and I'm gonna happy to make them. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye bye.